Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to answer the question, what is a status page aggregator? We'll take a look at what a status page aggregator is, how it works, who can benefit from it, how to start using it, and really what the best practices of a status page aggregator are. And I'll talk about my experience building the original status page aggregator, StatusGator. So let's start with the first question. What is a status page aggregator? Status page aggregator is a service, usually a hosted application, that aggregates the status of other cloud services, hosted applications, SaaS products, things that you host in the cloud. Products that have a status page where they publish incidents and outages. But when you depend on 20 or 30 or 40 different status pages, it's a little inefficient to go to all of those pages. You can use a status page aggregator to get the status of all of those systems in one central place. So let's dive in. First, let's look at what is a status page aggregator. So here is our website, statuspageaggregator.com, where we describe what a status page aggregator is. You can see on this site, we have some examples. Here's one example using StatusGator, and it shows several cloud services. You can look at GitHub as one of the most popular services, and they have a status page. Here it is. So let's look at what a status page is. A status page is a page published by a provider, in this case, GitHub, owned by Microsoft, that shows the status of their systems. Here you can see they have individual components. For example, Git operations, API requests, pull requests. All of these have a checkbox indicating that they are operational now. A status page generally has components on it. Sometimes they have regions. You can always go back through and see the history of some of these, although some providers don't publish a lot of detailed history. But in general, a status page shows current status and previous status. Now, in the event of an incident or an outage, you might start Googling around Amazon Web Services status page, for example. You might have to find the status page. StatusGator, or any status page aggregator, does some of this work for you by finding these status pages and pulling the status information from their status page into one central location. So here you can see the AWS, Amazon Web Services status page. There's quite a lot more detailed information on here, including regions, products, individual days. This is a pretty complicated status page, but some of them are much simpler. So about 12 years ago, I had this idea of aggregating the status of all of these services that I depended on into one central place, and I called it a status page aggregator. I called my status page aggregator StatusGator. Here's StatusGator. This is what it looks like when you sign up. You're given a blank slate, a list of monitors, and you can add things to that page to monitor them. So let's see how it works. First of all, I just click Add Monitor, and I click on Service Monitor. And here I'm presented with a directory of over 7,000 services. That's how many services StatusGator monitors. In this case, I can click through, I can search for things, for example, Amazon. Of course, I'll find Amazon Web Services and other Amazon products. If I want to browse by category here, I can click on a category that interests me. AI tools, for example. When I search for a product here, I'll find services by default that are the most popular. So here you can see Anthropic, very popular service, Copilot, very popular service. If I just browse without category selection here, I can choose products that are well known to most of us, I'm sure. Now, when I add a service to my board, I will start receiving outages when these providers publish them. And that is one of the key values of a status page aggregator. It will send you outage alerts when these providers publish outages on their status pages. So it's aggregating that information from all these disparate sources into one place. Well, what's the benefit of that? First of all, the main benefit is having a single pane of glass, one place to view the status of all of these systems. So you can see here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different things. Ordinarily, I'd have to go to 6 different status pages to get these statuses. But here, I have one single pane of glass. I can have my team view this page every time we're having an outage, and I can see, okay, what's affected, what's going on. Here it shows me the status. This is the present status as collected from that page. If I click through it, I can see individual outages and incidents that happened. I can see a whole history, possibly much more history than the provider themselves publish on their official status page. For example, Claude may only publish the last 30 days worth of outages, right? But StatusGator has many, many years of history. So having that full history here is very helpful. You get the single pane of glass, of course, and a status page aggregator will do the work of normalizing this data. So for example, all of these providers have the concept of components and they all have the concept of a status, but many of them use different terminology. Things like the severity, for example. Some might say it's a major outage, some might say it's a severe outage. And if you're looking to get notified about severe outages, you may want to only get notified about severe outages. Well, you can do that with a status page aggregator like StatusGator by just configuring your monitor under notifications and saying, I only want major incidents, for example. Because providers use different terminology, there's quite a lot of work involved to normalize that severity, to take one example. And a status page aggregator will generally do this hard work of normalizing and aggregating all of this data. How does a status page aggregator get this data? Well, typically using an API or by scraping it. So for example, let's look at the Cloudflare status page. Cloudflare is very good about publishing a status page with very granular detail on it. And generally, they allow anyone to access this page. Some providers make it very difficult to access their page. Some providers prevent scraping or they have no API, and StatusGator or another status page aggregator like it can generally collect that data even if it's made in a difficult to accept format. So for example, here's a look at DocuSign's status page. If they do not have an API for this, we can still collect the data through their status page by scraping it. Generally speaking, most providers have status pages that are quite accessible. They have APIs, or they have undocumented APIs, or they have a web page that is publicly available. But a status page aggregator will do all that difficult work of accessing, normalizing, and collecting that data. How can you benefit from a status page aggregator? Well, the number one way to benefit is getting alerts, notifications. So a status page aggregator will alert you when there are outages detected. In the case of StatusGator, you can go to integrations, you can configure a chat integration, and you can get notified directly into your Slack app, into your Teams channel, into your Google chat, into your Discord, even your WebEx. StatusGator can notify you when any of these providers have an outage to any notification channel. And the most popular, of course, are chat apps. If you click on Help Desk, we can also send tickets to Help Desk applications. Those are very popular notification channels. And of course, things like email or SMS are also popular. Getting alerts when providers publish outages is one of the key ingredients to a status page aggregator. And then the single pane of glass view, of course. In addition to this admin view, you might also want to publish your status page, your aggregated status page, to an entire audience. Could be your company, it could be your users, it could be your team members, it could even be your customers. And StatusGator has a public view. We call it public because it's public by default, that you can share out. You can customize this with your name and your logo. You could protect this behind an SSO if you prefer to keep it private to your team. And you can show the individual statuses of all of the services that you depend on in one single pane of glass. This is the aggregated view of your status page aggregator. This is what you would share out with everyone. In addition to allowing people to view this, they can also subscribe to updates here as well. So they can put in their email address and they can choose the services that they want to get notified about, and then they'll get direct notifications as well. It's another key concept of a status page aggregator, the ability to get notified, an ability for you to notify your team members when there's an outage. Now, one of the most important features of a status page aggregator is actually to send you outage alerts about things that are not on the status page. Well, how does that work? Well, an excellent status page aggregator like StatusGator will notify you about outages before the provider even acknowledges them. So let's take, for example, GitHub. If we click through GitHub here, we can see here's a possible outage from December 24th. This is an outage that affected GitHub and was reported to us by many people, yet was never acknowledged by GitHub. And that is a very key concept of a great status page aggregator. Giving you alerts before the official provider acknowledgement can be hugely effective to reduce tickets, to keep your team informed, because we all know status pages lie. People take a long time to acknowledge outages. And when you're struggling to get information about an outage, something like StatusGator can tell you about those outages. So you can see here, we rate GitHub a C. That means GitHub takes an average of 30 to 120 minutes to acknowledge outages that they publish. Generally means they have a lot of either unacknowledged outages or outages that they're very slow to acknowledge. And certain providers are more transparent than others. Of course, something like Cloudflare, they are generally pretty good about acknowledging. I think they acknowledge stuff very, very quickly. Some providers are terrible. Microsoft Teams, great example. They have a lot of outages that they don't acknowledge, or they're just very slow to acknowledge. And you can see a recent Teams outage here on this channel just by clicking the link below. But one of the most important features here is this early outage alerting. And that's why a status aggregator like StatusGator, which has the benefit of having thousands of users behind it, can really give you a leg up, can really help you understand that the outage you're seeing is not just you, that it's everyone. So it's very important to have a status page aggregator that can send you not just official outage alerts, but also unofficial outage alerts. And there are also services that don't have official status pages. Let's take, for example, Workday, one of the most popular products for HR teams, and it does not have an official status page. So when you click through here on StatusGator to the Workday status page, you'll see we have only the unofficial Workday status page, a page where users on the internet can report outages to us. But because Workday does not publish an official status page, you would only get unofficial outages to StatusGator. And this is truly the only way to know about incidents that are affecting Workday. They just do not publish outages. Another important feature of a status page aggregator is the ability to aggregate not just official outage pages. And of course, when there is no official status page like Workday, that is your only option. So what are some best practices for your status page aggregator setup? Well, first of all, to minimize the number of components that you're monitoring, take, for example, Cloudflare here. Cloudflare has 460 components. Many of these things you probably don't need or care about. First of all, with something like Cloudflare, I would always recommend filtering to specific products that you use. Here you can see they have 114 different products, and you probably don't use all of those. You might not care if Cloudflare billing is down, for example, so you could uncheck this one. You could also filter to specific regions if you cared about that. Microsoft Teams does not have this concept of components, and many providers don't publish individual granularity like that, so you may need to filter the ones that do have that capability, though. Anthropic here, for example, has Claude Code, Claude AI, Claude API. If your team is only using the Claude API, you would want to check off only the API. The other thing that's important is to ensure that you're monitoring all of your services. And if you look at my test dashboard here, of course, there's only 7 services on it, but in practice, you would have hundreds perhaps on your status page aggregator. The average StatusGator customer has 50 to 100 different services that they depend on. And it's really important to have all of those on your board so that when there's an outage, you can get quick access to it. Another thing that you can do here is make sure that it's connected to all of your integrations, all the notification channels that you use. Highly recommend a chat app, of course, a help desk, of course. And then ultimately, what many people are doing with a status page aggregator is trying to reduce support tickets. They're trying to get this outage information in front of people who might submit a ticket when there's an outage. Something like an embed can help you with that. If you click on the iframe embed here, you can see here's a little miniature version of a status page. And this can be embedded in an existing system. It could be embedded in a SharePoint, a Notion document, an internal staff portal, a help desk, anything where people are already seeing perhaps support information or already seeing a ticket form. This is where you're going to get the best value out of StatusGator or any status page aggregator. So ensure that your status page aggregator has the ability to embed the status in another system. That can really help reduce support tickets. So how to get started with a status page aggregator? Well, you can go to statusgator.com to try the original and best status page aggregator. Just go to statusgator.com, sign up. You can monitor 3 services for free. There's no credit card required to try it. You can sign up for 14 days and try everything. And I think you'll find that having a single pane of glass, a single place to view the status of all of your services is going to be life-changing for your IT team. Try StatusGator and let me know what you think in the comments.